In the vast silence beyond Mars, where sunlight fades into cold geometry, Jupiter stands as a guardian, a colossal world of storms and secrets. For centuries, it has absorbed the chaos of space, a planetary shield, swallowing comets, asteroids, and anything daring to drift too close to our inner worlds. But now, something has disturbed its silence. 3 weeks after 3I, Atlas left the inner solar system, radio observatories began recording faint electromagnetic surges originating near Jupiter's magnetosphere, signals pulsing in perfect harmony with the object's previous light patterns. At first, the data seemed impossible. How could an interstellar object, now billions of kilometers away, influence electromagnetic behavior near a gas giant with no direct line of connection? NASA's early reports dismissed it: magnetic noise, natural resonance, solar interference. But as the days passed, the pattern strengthened. Every 12 hours, precisely, Jupiter's magnetic field flared, releasing bursts of radio waves identical to those emitted by 3I, Atlas during its perihelion phase. Coincidence had finally become repetition. Repetition had become communication. Something had awakened around Jupiter. And whatever it wasn't acting alone. When the first radio bursts from Jupiter were decoded, scientists expected chaos, random cosmic static, the kind produced by storms or radiation belts. But what they found was something else entirely. The signal carried structure. A repeating pulse, not in seconds or minutes, but in ratios. 1 to 3, 927, a mathematical progression, the same fractal pattern once traced in 3I, Atlas's thermal emission as it approached the Sun. At the SETI array in California, Drive, Helena Cruz noticed that each burst ended with a subtle frequency drift, as if the signal was adjusting itself, listening, then replying. The data was transmitted in secret to JPL, where NASA analysts cross-referenced it with archived recordings of 3I, Atlas's magnetic oscillations. The match was almost perfect. "It's like something is syncing with Jupiter's field, Drive," Cruz whispered. As if it's using the planet, the possibility was terrifying. If 3I, Atlas had released something, a probe, a dormant mechanism, or even a transmission beacon, then Jupiter was now part of the message. Over the next 48 hours, the anomalies multiplied. Localized radio interference was detected from Earth's deep space antennas, each one timed precisely with Jupiter's magnetic pulse cycles. To the untrained ear, it was noise. But to those who recognized the pattern, it was unmistakable: the signal was spreading. And then came the most disturbing discovery of all. A new light source had appeared on the dark side of Europa, Jupiter's frozen moon. Infrared telescopes showed a faint ring of energy glowing beneath the surface ice, as if something beneath Europa had just come online. When the first images came in from the Europa Clipper probe, NASA scientists were silent. For decades, Europa had been one of the most promising places to search for alien life, a moon of endless ice with a dark ocean beneath. But now, it wasn't the ocean that drew attention, it was the light. Through the frozen crust, infrared sensors detected geometric patches, patterns of heat too regular to be natural. They weren't fissures, weren't volcanic vents, and weren't sunlight reflections. They were grids, structured, aligned, pulsing in perfect rhythm with the same intervals found in 3I, Atlas's data stream. The light wasn't random. It was organized. Something beneath the ice was responding to Jupiter's magnetic surges. Within hours, the data center in Pasadena went on lockdown. No external communications. No media leaks. Every file labeled Atlas Europa Correlation was classified under Cosmic Priority Level 7, a clearance designation not used since the Oumuamua incident. When independent researchers at ESA tried to replicate the analysis, they discovered something that deepened the mystery. Each pulse of energy beneath Europa was slightly out of sync with Jupiter's magnetic resonance, as if responding to an external conductor. The pattern wasn't being generated by the moon, it was being received. A transmission, repeating every 19 hours, encoded not in language, but in geometry. Every signal formed a fractal lattice, one eerily identical to the topographical layout of 3I, Atlas's surface ridges, recorded months earlier during its perihelion. It was no longer a coincidence. The two were linked, through design, not nature. After 72 hours of silence, NASA authorized a mission that was never meant to exist. Officially, it didn't. Codenamed Project Echo 9, it was a covert extension of the Europa Clipper program, a probe built to descend beneath the ice, carrying quantum imaging sensors and subcrust sonar arrays designed for one purpose only: to confirm if something artificial was generating those signals. The operation launched from lunar orbit, riding the gravitational slingshot of Earth and Mars. Publicly, it was logged as a trajectory correction test. Privately, it was the most classified mission since the 1977 Pioneer anomaly investigation. When Echo 9 entered Europa's orbit, the first anomaly appeared almost immediately. Beneath the Moon's surface, there was movement. Not the slow drift of ice, but rhythmic tremors, vibrations following the exact sequence of the 1:3, 9:27 ratio seen in 3I, Atlas's transmission. It was as if the Moon itself was responding to the probe's arrival. At a depth of 14 kilometers, the sensors registered open space, a liquid cavity stretching for hundreds of miles. But the sonar reflections were wrong. They weren't bouncing off rock or ice, they were reflecting off metal. A perfectly curved structure, embedded beneath Europa's crust, matching the scale of a small city. Echo 9 lowered its camera array into the abyss. The first image transmitted wasn't natural. Floating in the dark waters was a massive ring, smooth, symmetrical, radiating faint electromagnetic fields. Every 12 seconds, a burst of light rippled across its surface, the same pattern recorded near Jupiter weeks earlier. Then, for 13 full minutes, the feed went silent. When Echo 9 came back online, its telemetry was scrambled, coordinates distorted, internal clocks reset to zero. And buried in the final packet of data was a transmission no one could explain, a single pulse, repeating endlessly, broadcast directly toward Earth. It wasn't noise. It wasn't interference. It was a signal acknowledgement. As if something beneath Europa had just said, "We hear you." 2 days after Echo 9's transmission vanished, Earth's magnetosphere began to tremble. At first, it was subtle, a barely measurable fluctuation in the Van Allen radiation belts. But within hours, the readings grew impossible to ignore. Every 12 hours, the exact same interval as the pulses from Jupiter, Earth's magnetic field spiked, as if receiving invisible waves from across the solar system. Global observatories began detecting synchronized radio interference in Alaska, Siberia, Chile, and Australia, each distortion forming the same signature sequence: 1, 3, 9, 27. And at the heart of every surge, a faint harmonic tone, not random static, but a pattern identical to the signal that Echo 9 last received before its systems went dark. It was no longer just data. It was transmission, targeted, intentional, and directed straight at Earth. By the third cycle, the signal began manifesting in unexpected ways. Power grids in northern Europe recorded synchronized surges as if something invisible was resonating through the planet's electromagnetic core. Compasses drifted. Communication satellites lost orientation. And deep beneath the oceans, hydrophones captured the impossible, subsonic vibrations repeating the same pulse sequence as Jupiter. "It's not coming from him anymore, drive," Helena Cruz whispered, as she analyzed the wave patterns from Echo 9's black box. "It's bouncing back." The realization spread like wildfire across agencies. Earth wasn't just receiving a message, it was now part of the network. Somehow, the activation near Jupiter had extended its reach across the entire solar system, turning planetary magnetic fields into nodes of a single, connected system. A system that was waking up. The moment NASA feared had come. 3I, Atlas hadn't just left the solar system, it had rewired it. By the time the seventh pulse struck Earth, it was no longer a question of if, it was a question of how far. NASA, ESA, and the Chinese National Space Observatory began tracing the magnetic synchronization outward, past Jupiter, past Saturn, into the frozen orbits of Uranus and Neptune. And what they found defied everything known about planetary physics. Each gas giant was now emitting faint, harmonic fluctuations, energy signatures synchronized to the same 1 to 3, 927 sequence. Every world in the outer solar system had become part of an invisible lattice, a living, resonant network stretching across billions of kilometers. But it didn't stop there. For the first time, deep space antennas at Goldstone and Arecibo's successor array detected matching signals coming from outside our solar system, in the direction of the constellation Lyra, exactly where 3I, Atlas had first entered interstellar space. The signal wasn't just leaving us, it was connecting back. Dr. Helena Cruz and her team began to map the harmonics and found something horrifying. When plotted in 3 dimensions, the frequencies formed a geometric shape, a massive sphere of resonance, centered not on the Sun, but on Earth itself. It was as if the activation sequence had been waiting for this exact alignment, this exact point in time. The planets weren't the source. They were components, like circuits in an ancient, cosmic machine that had just powered on. Every frequency peak aligned perfectly with the orbital positions of major moons and planets, creating an invisible framework, a network of resonance that extended light years beyond our system. And then, as the data streamed in from outer satellites, a secondary signal appeared, weaker, distant, but unmistakably similar. It wasn't just us. Another system, somewhere far away, was transmitting the same pattern. Whatever 3I, Atlas had awakened near Jupiter was not an isolated event. It was a relay, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, something vast had just answered. For weeks, scientists around the world worked in total silence. No public updates. No leaks. Only fragments of numbers, recorded across every observatory still online. And then, without warning, the data stopped. All transmission, from Earth, Jupiter, Europa, every outer probe, froze in perfect alignment for exactly 9 minutes and 13 seconds. When the signal resumed, it was no longer noise. It was structured. Not in binary, not in language, but in form. When converted into a spatial model, it created a shape, a rotating 3-dimensional lattice, interlocked in 12 layers, and containing within it, a sequence. The same fractal pattern that had defined 3I, Atlas's surface ridges, its light curves, its radio emissions. But now, the geometry was different. It had evolved. At its core was a single alignment, a point in space, exactly 63 light-years away, in the direction of Lyra. That's when Dr. Helena Cruz and her team at the Deep Space Signal Array made the discovery that changed everything. The structure wasn't random. It was a map. And the point at its center was transmitting the same return signal Earth had just begun to echo. A two-way communication. Across space. Across systems. And then came the translation. The pulses weren't a message in words, they were an invitation. Each cycle corresponded to gravitational coordinates, to resonance frequencies, to orbital alignments across multiple systems. The signal wasn't asking us to respond. It was preparing us, as if activating a synchronization event that had been dormant for millennia. Somewhere out there, another world had received the same activation. And now, both systems were resonating in perfect mathematical harmony. But harmony wasn't peace. In the final decoded layer of the transmission, a secondary signal emerged, a waveform embedded deep within the resonance band, like a whisper beneath the music. When slowed down and converted to audio, the pattern was unmistakable. It was the exact spectral signature of 3I, Atlas itself, its final emission before vanishing into the void. As if the object had never truly left, as if it had been waiting, watching, for this precise moment to complete the connection. And so, the network is awake. The planets hum in unison. The signal echoes between stars. And for the first time in recorded history, we are no longer the observers. We are the ones being observed. On the night of October 29th, the pulse sequence reached its final cycle. All across the solar system, planetary magnetospheres flared in unison: Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, even the distant edges of the Kuiper belt, each radiating the same synchronized burst of electromagnetic light. And then, for the first time since 3I, Atlas appeared, the sky changed. Observatories from Chile to Tibet recorded faint distortions rippling through the stars, as if the constellations themselves were shifting, their light bending under something vast and invisible passing between. It wasn't gravity. It wasn't motion. It was response. For 9 minutes and 13 seconds, every known radio channel, every satellite frequency, every cosmic wavelength fell silent. Then, a signal returned. Not from Jupiter, not from Lyra, but from every direction at once. A deep, harmonic resonance rolling through the vacuum of space, sweeping across planets, vibrating through oceans, and echoing in the ionosphere like a whisper. Synchronization complete. That's all it said. 3 words, buried in subsonic layers, spoken in no human language, yet perfectly understood. The magnetic fields quieted. The auroras faded. But deep beneath the polar ice, seismic monitors recorded faint rhythmic vibrations, mirroring those beneath Europa. The pattern was identical. The activation had reached Earth. For the first time in history, humanity wasn't just detecting a cosmic anomaly. It had become part of it. No one knows what the network is. A signal chain, a warning system, or something far older, finally turning its gaze toward us. But one thing is certain: when the stars trembled that night, something vast awakened. And whatever 3I, Atlas truly was, it was never just a visitor. It was a key. And now, the door has been unlocked.